And I always like to start out with what empathy is not. Because again, 25 years ago, I was working at a computer software company, and I was in sales, and I just thought, empathy was a bunch of hooey, because I thought that it's hugs. It's not hugs. It's not just trying to get everyone to like you and be nice to everyone. It's not having to be wrong. In other words, telling the other person that they're right. It's not giving in, oh, I guess, we have to do it your way. It's not something soft and squishy. You're going to learn there's some neuroscience and brain science to it. It's not listening to whiny people all the time. Now, sometimes you're going to connect and validate, but it's not just dealing with negative, whiny people all the time. And it's not sympathy. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, the difference between sympathy and empathy. So that's what it's not. So what exactly is empathy? Well, there's 3 different types of empathy that you'll read about in the psychological research. The first is emotional. That is where you actually feel what the other person is feeling. So if they're sad, we all have mirror neurons. So when we experience someone's emotions, those mirror neurons actually fire up the emotions in ourselves. So if they're sad, you feel sad. If they're enthusiastic, suddenly you feel enthusiastic. By the way, I know a lot of you, are in sales or have sales within your retail businesses. I heard a great definition of a sale once. A sale is the transfer of enthusiasm from the mind of the salesperson to the mind of the customer. And we can transfer enthusiasm. All right, then there's our cognitive empathy, which is where we think about the other person's perspective. Gosh, why might they be struggling with something we're asking them to do? Why might they be avoiding something? So we think about it. And then finally, you have compassionate empathy, because you can feel what another person's thinking. You can think about cognitively what they're thinking, but you could not care. So compassion is actually having a feeling of care for that person. So there's your straight definition of empathy. All right, so what's our plan? What's the business case? Because again, I always like to know the ROI, the why behind something. Well, in the case of innovation, and you can read these statistics, when people feel their leaders are more empathetic, they're more willing to step in with new ideas. They're more willing to take a risk to try something new. There's something called psychological safety. In other words, they feel like they're not going to get criticized, they're not going to get put down, they're not going to be, they're going to be listened to and not interrupted. They're safer to bring up ideas. Engagement. People are much more engaged when they feel heard and understood by their leader. And again, engagement isn't just about working extra hours, it's about doing a little bit of extra. It's about coming to work with a positive attitude, right? There's so much more to engagement than just how many hours someone works. And finally, retention, this is key for all of you in your businesses, is again, the empathy of a leader will significantly drive up retention. One interesting example of the impact empathy can make is I've delivered this training to surgeons. Now, you want your surgeon pretty high in their IQ and technical skills, right? Who cares about the emotional intelligence of a surgeon? Well, for the surgeons, there was a study that showed that surgeons who are high in empathy get sued less often. Makes sense, right? You bet they paid attention after that? So, just like a patient will feel more connected to and won't want to sue a surgeon, if they feel that empathy, if they feel connected to you, they're more likely to give their best and stay. They're less likely than to leave. They have lower leaving intentions. So there's an ROI, there's a business case for your businesses to empathy.